Watch this.
And that starts with keeping promises.
Promises, promises. That was the theme of this year's State of the State address. Will keeping those promises be a good thing? Well, it depends on who you ask.
Brown v. Board of Education said race cannot be a determining factor in school attendance.
Neither should income or address, according to Idaho lawmakers, who will try for the fourth straight session to make Idaho's right to school choice more choosier. Camping is a favorite pastime in Idaho, and so is being frustrated over trying to reserve those camping spots online. Day one of Idaho launching its own website to claim your site didn't quite go as planned. Like a gator getting in your face bad.
Idaho's elected leaders have promised and delivered real results over and over and over for the people we serve.
And we are back. We're keeping our promise to return after our holiday break. We begin with the beginning of the 2025 legislative session. Kicking off today with Governor Brad Little's State of the State address. And we're going to get right to it with both Aspen Shumpert and Joe Paris alongside me here to kind of break down what happened and what promises Governor Little plans to hopefully keep this year, right?
Yeah, there's a lot on the table, so we'll dig into some of it now. And don't worry, folks, over the next 3, maybe 4 months, who knows, we will be on top of it. But a big question that I know that for all Idahoans, did they talk about taxes at all today? Are they going to do a big tax cut again this year? We'll see what they actually do, but the answer in terms of is the topic on the table, the answer is yes. And I spoke with House Speaker Mike Moyle about a few different topics today. We'll start with taxes. He says lawmakers are focused on taxes in several areas.
Careful how you do it. And there's some movement in his budget. Now that we know a little bit about his budget, there's some things we can do there. And there's room to do quite a bit. I think we can touch on all three. I think we can touch on income, sales, and property. I'm not positive, but I think we can, and we'll try to do that.
And that's something, as the state of Idaho has continued to grow, that we've heard from homeowners, we've heard from people across the state saying, well, if taxes were lowered, it'd be more affordable to live here.
Yeah, so even Governor Little talked about, I think he said $100 million in his State of the State. That's what he wants to bring to the table this year. Aspen, you spoke to the Democrats who this year, this session, well, there are 4 fewer in the Idaho legislature than there have been in the last couple of years.
There are, yeah. And they do feel differently about the recommended $100 million in tax relief by the governor. But State Minority Leader Melissa Wintrow suggests if we're going to look at tax relief, there is one area that may be better than the others.
I'd like to remind everybody that when we talk about taxes, that's also a reduction of revenue, and that's a reduction of the vital resources that we need to help with programs and services for our government. Now, if we are going to lower taxes or lower those revenues, I think we should focus on the grocery tax. Lifting the tax on groceries is a more meaningful way to help working families versus an income tax rebate, which we've seen in the past really benefits wealthier people and not really middle or lower income folks.
The Democrats say although Idaho has been a fast-growing state, we're not seeing as big as an influx anymore, and that may be dangerous to commit to a $100 million reduction in revenue and could lead to basic needs that the public counts on to not be fully delivered.
Democrats obviously not singing the praises of that State of the State. But we talked about this all the time. Least regulated state in the union. That was addressed today.
Yeah, and it's really in vogue now, especially on the federal level with the Trump administration. And yes, Idaho has taken pride in really cutting regulations, the so-called red tape. Governor Little, the legislature, they've really tackled that in recent years. It is something, though, that Speaker Moyle reminds us that really started in the Idaho House. And with all the talk on the federal level about the Department of Government Efficiency, it's called DOGE, Idaho, well, they're ready to double down on more.
You'll see a bill here soon that will ask the agencies to let us know where all their statutes are, what the statutes say, what they pertain to, and then I want to find a path forward to eliminate a lot of that, because a lot of that's redundant, it's not needed, and I want to clean up the statute books, just like we've done in rules, and there's more to do on the rule process.
And that is something that we've heard from agencies in recent years when they kind of did all the rule reviews. And even in our work, when we look into things, there are duplicates or things that kind of contradict each other. So with such an extended code, they're ready to clean up the regulations.
Yeah, on election night, we heard from Speaker Moyle at the GOP party talking about how they were ready to address Medicaid and what was going on with the state there. But that wasn't addressed in the State of the State today, was it?
Yeah, no, it wasn't, but it remains a priority for the Democrats. And what we didn't hear from the governor was any priorities or discussions on health care. Healthcare remains at the top of the list for the Democratic Party, including defending Medicaid expansion, as well as fighting for a chance for Idaho's abortion ban.
We continue to have the most severe and extreme abortion ban in the country that has no exception for women's health. We know that women have had to be airlifted out of the state, that we have lost, I believe now 55% of our high-risk maternity specialists, and I think it's now up to about a third of our OBGYNs. We can't get doctors to come here. No doctors want to practice in a state where they face 5 years in prison for providing routine health care when a woman is having a health emergency and the only way to save her is through an abortion. That happens. That's a medical reality, and it's not a medical reality right now that is accommodated by our laws.
House Minority Leader Elena Rubel says in the past, Republican counterparts have blocked even a hearing or a vote for any kind of health exception to the abortion ban to address some of the realities like women who are hemorrhaging or facing a health emergency. Representative Rubel says they will continue to push to try to get an exception to Idaho's abortion ban, which we know is still tied up in court.
Which I'm guessing will not get any sort of hearing until that is decided, because then it may prove that they don't have to do anything. The courts may say it's fine as it is. All right, so the next big topic that we know is coming down the pike this legislative session is education.
Yes, education.
Always, every year.
Always is, and then the very specific tenet here of school vouchers, school credits, whatever you want to call them. And it's an interesting conversation that we have followed for years here, and Speaker Moyle has a lot of influence on the topic. So here are the day one thoughts on school choice. Again, ideas have referred to this as vouchers or education savings accounts in years past. Those are proposals that failed, but this is also something that Governor Little is focused on too, and kind of drew a line in the sand.
Concerns that were voiced by the governor, I think, are going to be addressed in this bill. And so I think that will help make it get to the end of the finish line, I hope. You know, he laid out what he wants in the bill. And I think from what I've seen, most of those concerns are addressed in the bill. Now, you know, it's a draft, so it could change. But in the draft I've seen, they're addressed.
And when you talk to Governor Little and you hear from him, I mean, specifically in his State of the State, he talks about efficiency and you talk about accountability. And so there will be questions on what that looks like. I will say, too, there's an idea we'll talk about in just a moment on this, but there are a lot of different ideas floating around the State House on how to accomplish this.
And if I'm correct, this might be the first time he addressed it in the State of the State, specifically with a school voucher, school choice, tax credit kind of thing. Okay, so on the Democratic side, what's their take on this?
Yeah, they're not fans of the tax credit. And although Democrats were pleased to hear there was continued investment in public education, the school tax relief is a big concern for them, they say, even with the governor ensuring the tax credit will be constitutional and have full accountability.
It's unfortunate to see the governor has been standing up against this for a number of years, and this year it sounds like he's cracking. I still hope there's a way to stop this from happening, because we have seen in states that have pursued these plans that it's been a disaster. And he's saying he's proposing $50 million. It will never be stopped at $50 million. In Arizona, they started with $30 million. It's now $825 million. So this is a budget buster that is a disaster for public schools.
Representative Rubel says if we see this, she feels that it will bust the budget and that essentially the government is cutting checks to wealthy families who are already choosing to put their kids in private school, and they think this is something that the state can't afford to do. Brian, I know you're going to get into this a little more.
Again, there's certainly more to explore when it comes to this, because again, we have not seen the bill. It is still in draft form. It can change, but I think that's something we can see very soon within the next week or so. So thank you both. We're going to look forward to more from both of you as this legislative session continues. But speaking of tax credits.
Any school choice measure I would consider must be done the Idaho way. That means it is fair, responsible, transparent, and accountable. It must prioritize the families that need it most, and it must not take away funds from public schools.
Well, it didn't take long for Governor Little to talk about the big old elephant in the room that just won't leave. Page 2 of his 6-page speech brought us school choice, something state lawmakers have been trying to bring to Idaho since the 2022 session. That year, It was called an education savings account that would give parents 90% of what the state spends per student. Back then, that was about $6,750 per year per student. Well, that bill never made it out of committee. Then in 2023, another ESA bill died in the Senate, while the idea of a school choice tax credit was barely killed in a House committee. But a very similar bill will be teed up this session, in the words of one of its sponsors, as soon as possible. Representative Wendy Horman talked about it today in a public hearing alongside former Arizona Governor Doug Ducey to promote a school choice bill being pushed through the Idaho legislature this session. And while we likely, again, won't see a draft until probably at earliest next week, we were told this year's shot at school choice, just like last year's, would offer a tax rebate to parents up to $5,000 per student to pay for educational experiences. Educational experiences, well, that would include tuition to a private school, a micro school, a learning pod, or whatever it might cost to homeschool your kid. And it would also cover transportation. And like last year's bill, the cost to the state would be capped at $50 million, we're told. But the difference this time around,
that money that they're going to be rebating through that tax credit could be invested in
is prioritizing all low-income families.
how does that work?
So last year we just had a $10 million grant that was available to low-income, and the other $40 million was available universally. This time it will only become available to universal after the time frame for low-income, and it may get filled with the low-income. Wealthy families already have school choice. They, regardless of their address, regardless of what their public school is or isn't offering, they can afford to send their child to another option. Low-income families don't have that opportunity, and this bill will create that.
Accountability was an issue previous years, like none. Does this one have that?
Absolutely. It has strong fiscal accountability because if you commit tax fraud, it's a felony. Academic accountability because it requires English, social studies, math, and science to be taught, just like we require in the public schools.
But are there tests that go along with that?
No.
So no test to say you're teaching it and they're learning it.
Correct. The strongest form of accountability, I believe, I agree with Governor Ducey on that, is parents and a school earning the privilege to educate someone's child.
Okay, so the priority is low-income families. So what would this bill consider low-income priority? Any family earning less than 300% of the federal poverty level, we're told. For a family of four, that would mean they're making less than $93,600 a year. And there will be a deadline for those families to take advantage. After that, it then opens up to anyone. Representative Horman made it clear this money would not be coming from the public school budget, but that doesn't matter, according to the Idaho Education Association.
that money that they're going to be rebating through that tax credit could be invested in public schools. Why would we invest in vouchers when our public schools are chronically underfunded for over decades? It's an intentional chronic underfunding of public education in this state that has driven this need that they see for vouchers, for creating another alternative opportunity for people to go to a different kind of school. If you fully funded public schools the way that they should be funded, the way the Idaho Constitution mandates that they be funded, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
As Representative Horman said, there is a $50 million cap on this one.
Every voucher bill that I've ever heard of that was ever approved by any legislature started off as a measured, capped bill. They always come back in later years, open up the box again, make it bigger, make it bigger, make it bigger every year.
They've been trying this for years. And as you heard today, their argument is the reason it hasn't gone through is because of the establishment blocking it. What do you think about that?
The lawmakers in previous years have seen the light around what the real challenges with vouchers are. They understand that there is no accountability for these tax dollars. They understand that they do hurt rural schools and rural students. They have understood that this is a tax rebate or assistance for a wealthy family who's trying to send their Boise private school student to a school when rural students are not being served properly.
And this is no different in your mind?
Absolutely no different.
Mike Journey calls it a voucher, by the way, not a tax rebate, because he says anytime you take money out of the system and use it for private parochial schools, well, that's a voucher, in his opinion. A buzzword those hoping to expand Idaho's school choice options don't like. But if it takes tax dollars away from public schools, well, Journey calls it a voucher. To sell this new deal, they brought in the former governor of Arizona, as we mentioned, Doug Ducey, who was able to get his state to fund an educational savings account plan before he left office in 2022. But what has been pointed out repeatedly since then, was how that program, which went live in 2022, didn't have a cap on it. And what was estimated to cost about $65 million ended up costing the state more than $332 million that first year, and could be as much as $429 million this year, which was a big contributor to the Grand Canyon state facing a $1.4 billion shortfall in their budget. And another study in Arizona showed the poorer the county, the fewer those enrolled in the voucher program, mostly because, well, there's a lack of private schools in those areas. Arizona's program is not Idaho's plan, we're told. They're not just going to be giving families money. It would be a tax rebate based on what that family already spent. And as we said, it would be capped at $50 million. We'll see if that stays. We plan to dive into this a bit further when we get an actual bill that gets introduced and debated this session. Well, there are about 2,500 campsites scattered across 30 of Idaho's state parks, which isn't a lot considering how many people live in the Gem State and why so many of them moved here the last few years. To take advantage of Idaho's outdoors and camp. To get those prime spots during peak times, well, you got to be a planner. You got to know when you want to go well in advance, and then you got to get online and reserve that spot. Idaho Parks and Rec decided they were going to use something called Reserve America for the last few years, but the agency wanted to modernize their system by switching to what's called Idaho Time. Well, that program launched today, giving locals and tourists a chance to snag a campsite between now and the end of May. But as Hunter Funk learned, the real adventure was really trying to get this system to work, because as we find out, when all these things always launch, there's always snags. And this one had a gator.
Yes, this one had a gator. There was a real gator problem in Idaho. Let me explain. All right, early this morning, campers went to book their reservations for 2025 on the new system. And as most expected, the wait time was long, with thousands sitting in the queue. Most people say it took about 30 minutes to an hour just to get in. But once they finally made their reservation and they put in their credit card information, this is what happened.
Went through the whole thing, went to hit like pay.
It spins for a minute and came back, and there's the alligator. Oh, that's strange. It looks like an alligator ate your data.
That's when I got the like gator of like, oops, like your data's gone. We don't know what's up with that.
I'm like, whoa, that's weird. I've never seen one of those.
Now, this is what they're talking about. This is the blue screen that popped up. Now, according to Tawny Bean, there was also a photo of a gator the first 2 times that she tried. Now, their cards were charged for the reservation, but there was no confirmation emailed that was followed. Tawny tried 5 different times to make her reservation and was charged each time. Arthur says he called his campsite and was able to work things out. Both of them spent several hours trying to figure it out. Well, after talking to Idaho Parks and Recreation, they say the gator has finally been caught. The issue is now resolved. They say there was a technical glitch around 9:30, and a lot of people were kicked out in the process. While the reservations were completed, it didn't send out the confirmation emails, and because of this, they are now manually going through the list of reservations that were made today, sending out confirmation emails, calling people who ran into the errors. Tawny was refunded and booked for her reservation. Now, they also want to say thanks to everyone who hopped on Facebook and told them about the issues because it helped them figure them out quicker. Each post had dozens of people talking about their experience. Now, if you did have issues and still need help in getting them fixed, the department says to call 208-631-7536 and they can help you. As of now, there is hardly no wait time, and starting tomorrow, people can start to make the reservations through June 30th. Wednesday, it opens through July 31st, and come Saturday, reservations 9 months in advance can be made. Now, they say they are also looking for any feedback for the system too, so heading to Facebook and kind of having that conversation might change the system if you wanted a certain way.
Well, it seems like it has nowhere to go but up from here on.
Yes, really hit that downfall for a second.
I know. So, okay, what does that number do? When you call that number, how are they going to help you?
So that's going to be a direct line with Parks and Rec.
Okay.
That is Robbie. She's the PR person for Parks and Rec. So they'll pass you to the campsite that you're working with. So it'll get you the right way. Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Hunter. So be patient.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much.
Well, after starting our Monday socked in with dense fog in many places, the fog lifted and we enjoyed blue skies over the Treasure Valley. Boise sitting at 46 degrees right now. Another January afternoon with temperatures well above normal. We're in the upper 20s right now in Sun Valley, just below freezing in McCall. We had some spectacular sunsets happening just a few moments ago, but that sun has slowly slipped beyond the horizon. Tonight will be clear and cold. We had a storm system that mostly stayed to to our south, and all of the snow it created across the Owyhees is digging further southward today, taking the clouds with it. After this, we have high pressure that will amplify in from the west. We are on the eastern periphery of that system right now. That is sending cold air from the north our direction. So big picture wise, we'll have frosty mornings, seasonable afternoons, clear skies overhead. But with that high pressure in control, we also get very stagnant conditions. So air stagnation advisories in place for most of our viewing area through Friday morning, as we could see an inversion developing for just a couple of days. Tomorrow, though, lots of sunshine after our cold and potentially foggy start again tomorrow. We'll hit the upper 30s to right around 40 in the Treasure Valley. Our 7-day forecast shows those temperatures just holding steady through Friday. A little bump in temps over the weekend, but the big story here is that we are dry for the most part for the next week. We'll be right back.
All right, according to the governor, tax breaks are coming your way, but according to Jack in Boise, the grocery tax is the most regressive tax there is. It needs to be eliminated, possibly a consideration this session. Chuck and Jerome, in the Friday news conference, Speaker Moyle commented that competition for public schools would be good. Republicans are also for leveling the playing field. Thus, he should be in favor of equal accountability between public and private schools. Jeff says, with the school voucher system in Idaho, how about a tax cut for those of us who choose not to have children, but take taxes for public schools? Well, it's in the Idaho Constitution. We have to fund public schools. Why should we have school vouchers? I've worked in the Boise schools and seen mismatched desks, chairs, freezing classrooms, and ancient textbooks. Put money into our public schools and let the private school people fund their own schools, says Sean. Can you explain how a low-income family can afford the tuition in the first place so they can get a $5,000 tax rebate? Sheila wants to know. Very good question. We'll look into that at some point. We'll see you tomorrow.
Continue with us and watch free now on the KTVB Plus app everywhere you stream.